Oh, hey, how's it going? The Seattle Seahawks season is over. I think the Seattle Seahawks currently have a 1% chance to make the playoffs, so let's just assume that's a 0% chance because we're going to lose a couple more games. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. And I mean that when it comes to the future. It's a bad thing right now, obviously, because we're losing and we're not doing well. However, when it comes to the future, I think this is a good time for the Seattle Seahawks to do something. To be completely honest, just to do anything. Changes need to be made, and that is glaringly obvious. And now the Seattle Seahawks have reason. Because, I believe the reason why Pete Carroll has had such great job security over the past few years of him being an absolute buffoon has been how good he was throughout, 2011, 2012, 2013, all the way to 2015, all that type of, hey, the Legion of Boom is really good. Russell Wilson's playing pretty gosh darn good too. That's where I think Pete Carroll got his job security. But now it's really showing that without Russell Wilson playing at an absolute MVP level, Pete Carroll isn't all that. Pete Carroll is not a great coach. Like I'm gonna give Pete Carroll his props for what he did back in the day, but now he's just trying to stick to all the old stuff that he was doing, and it's not working. It's been figured out, and he just keeps on trying to go back to it constantly, and it's just not working, and he refuses to make changes. And I think we see that a lot when you watch how the offense plays. They just look completely outside of the entirety of the NFL. Like the NFL, everyone's adopting and making changes week by week and using these new plays that are working, and they're running like trickery and they're learning things from other teams. But Pete Carroll, we just come in, we throw a horrible pass trying to do too much on first down, and then second and long, we decide to run it for one whole yard, and then immediately we have a third and long situation, automatically putting our offense in a bad situation, and it doesn't work out for us. And that's something that I believe comes from Pete Carroll. He wants to run his team a certain way, and it just seems like he doesn't want to adopt what the entirety of the NFL is doing. He wants to be that kind of odd man out and try to be the one that's smarter than everyone else, but now he just looks like an absolute idiot. And I believe when it comes to the defense, you see something kind of similar where the Seattle Seahawks, they kind of play by this bend but don't break mentality, which sounds good on paper. Hey, no matter what is going on defense, don't let up points. Don't let them get inside the end zone. But it doesn't really work when the average time of possession per game is like 40 minutes to 20 minutes, and the Seahawks are not in favor there. Every single time you watch the Seahawks, you're basically watching the defense for 3/4 of the game, and you get to watch the offense for like 10 minutes. And most of the time, they're not doing good because they're sitting on the bench for 15 minutes between possessions. And obviously, you're not really going to keep any momentum that you might have had, or especially if you had a bad drive previously, you're not going to be able to jumpstart yourself back up from watching your defense just get walked over, and maybe they only gave up a field goal instead of a touchdown. Wow, in 11 minutes. It's really unfortunate watching this team because you see the philosophy, you see the way that Pete Carroll and Ken Norton want to run this defense, and it's, I believe, ruining the entirety of the team. The defense, by the end of the game, is absolutely insanely tired, and you can't blame them. The defense is playing super well. Our players are playing actually really good on defense, but when you're playing 45 minutes of the game, it's just not going to work out. You're going to get tired. The offense is playing 15 minutes of the game, getting cold, getting the cobwebs while they're sitting on the bench, and the defense is getting absolutely burnt out. And by the end of the game, the defense can't really do much, so the possessions are getting longer and longer and longer, and then the offense, they just can't get into a rhythm because there's no rhythm to get into because the defense is constantly on the field, the offense is constantly on the bench. It's just a very unfortunate cycle that continuously repeats itself, and you see it every single week. It's not like it's something that's here and there where it's, oh, maybe it's because this team is good. No, we could play the absolute worst team in the league and the same exact thing would happen. We could play the Lions, which we do in week 17. I'm going to be very interested to watch that. We could play the Lions and they would kill us in time of possession like every single other team has for the past 2 years, basically. And I believe that comes down to Pete Carroll. Now, I'm not going to say that all the problems ride on Pete Carroll. Obviously, Russell Wilson has not been playing the greatest of games. I believe his pride has taken over his smarts where he wants to be on the field. He wants to try and be that guy that'll will this team to the playoffs because obviously they're not going to the playoffs without a top-tier Russell Wilson quarterback type of play. But Russell Wilson, you can tell he has issues with his finger. He's missing throws that you would never expect Russell Wilson to miss. For some reason, he's missing reads. He seems completely out of it mentally. He's just missing reads that you wouldn't expect him to miss because, you have DK Metcalf wide open going into the corner of the end zone. You have Freddie Swain wide open 20 yards down the middle, and he's forcing it into double coverage. There's a lot of bad plays that he's making. So I'm not going to say this is all on Pete Carroll, but Russell Wilson, like him playing bad is one thing. Pete Carroll consistently having the same thing going on with his team shows that he's not trying to change. He's not doing anything differently. He's literally the definition of insanity, doing the same exact thing over and over and over again, watching it not work over and over again, and then saying, we didn't execute. Let's do better next week, doing the same thing. At some point, you can't blame execution. There's a whole hodgepodge of issues with the Seattle Seahawks right now, and I don't want to just blame one person. But I believe the thing is, the reason why I really go after Pete Carroll so much and why I believe Pete Carroll should be fired is that is what's going to dictate any change. Pete Carroll has clearly shown that he doesn't think he's the problem. He doesn't think the philosophy, the scheme, or anything like that is the problem. It's all on execution. And at some point, you can't blame execution when every single game of the last 2 years has had the same issues of time of possession, the defense is on the field too long, they get tired, the offense can't get into a rhythm. All that has been a consistent issue. No changes have been seemingly made. It's just very disappointing to see. And I believe that starts with Pete Carroll. You get rid of Pete Carroll, you bring in a different head coach, ideally a younger head coach that's going to be more willing to adjust to the NFL, because Pete Carroll doesn't want to adjust to the NFL. And that's my biggest issue. You know, we have such talented players. DK Metcalf, absolutely amazing. He's a stud. He's hot. He's big. He's cute. I mean, he's a good wide receiver. We have Tyler Lockett. He doesn't drop the ball very much. We have really, really good tight ends, and we just don't use them effectively. We throw them on little 4-yard curl routes, and if they catch the ball, you know, we get 4 yards. We don't do anything with them, even though Gerald Everett is great at running after the catch. We don't throw our wide receivers on slants. We don't do anything like actually interesting with our offense. We just play like absolute buffoons out there. And we have Russell Wilson, one of the better quarterbacks in the entire league. We have one of the best receiving groups when you combine the wide receivers and the tight ends. We have so much depth at the receiver area, wide receivers, tight ends, Will Dissly, Gerald Everett, even Colby Parkinson, DK, Tyler Lockett. I guess you can throw in Dwayne Eskridge. Freddie Swain's really good. Penny Hart's pretty fast and he's nice. Like, there's a lot of guys that we have that are talented. They can obviously make things work, but our offense is just so bland. And when it comes to the defense, we have so much talent there too. Jamal Adams, he's actually playing really well over the last month, but it doesn't matter because our offense can't get anything going. Quandre Diggs, I believe that man deserves to be paid, because even though I was very skeptical going into the season, he has been really the only person that's been making major plays for the Seattle Seahawks. Like, yeah, Bobby Wagner has like 120 tackles. That's because the Seahawks, every single time they're on defense, give up like a 15 to 20 play drive, it seems like, and Bobby Wagner is going to make about half of those tackles every single drive. So constantly having the defense on the field, it makes the stats look pretty nice for Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. Jordan Brooks has been playing absolutely spectacular, but it's not a good philosophy to try and win games. It doesn't work. And of course, there's been a lot of complete duds on defense. Now, Jamal Adams, do I think he's been playing as well as he could have been? No, but I don't think he's been playing like an absolute trash can. You know, Jamal Adams somehow has 2 interceptions in the last 3 weeks. You know, I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that because they were some pretty easy interceptions to get. They were basically handed to him, but still he made the play. He was in the right spot. He hasn't gotten any sacks this year. I believe that's because we're using him differently. There's been a lot of duds on the defensive line. Carlos Dunlap, an absolute god from last year, a godsend. He just has been playing like absolute boo-boo butt cheeks. The only thing that I remember him doing was getting a false start last week. I don't think he's gotten a sack. If he has, it's been a super long time. I haven't heard his name called. I kind of forgot he was on the team until he got that false start or that offsides the other day. It's just so disappointing because we have so much talent. You know, Darrell Taylor has really came in and looked very good. Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner, of course, very good linebackers. We've had Trey Brown come in and he's been super promising. DJ Reed and Trey Brown would be a great duo at corner. And then we have Ugo Amadi still at the slot corner. He's had a couple holding calls and, you know, it's been pretty unfortunate for him, but still, he's been playing pretty good. It's just, we have so much talent and we just have horrible scheming, and it's just we're getting cooked every single week because we just give up yards so easily. The defense is constantly on the field. The offense doesn't do anything spectacular, doesn't do anything dynamic. It's like Russell Wilson constantly is saying that, hey, look, you remember when we had success here, that we were playing up-tempo, and then we come into the game and play like nothing up-tempo. We play the slowest brand of football in the entirety of the world. And I blame that on Pete Carroll. That's why I think Pete Carroll should be fired. And I really think it comes down to that need for change. The Seattle Seahawks have so much talent. I've talked about it so much. The Seahawks have a lot of talent. Obviously, very glaring issues on the offensive line. Center is a big problem. Dwayne Brown looks like absolute trash this year. I really hope we don't give him another contract just from his namesake and his history with the team, because he has been playing horrible over the last like 6, 7, 8 weeks. But when I really look at it, I really hate to blame this all on Pete Carroll. You don't want to blame a single individual. I feel like that's kind of like a cop-out way to express the issues that we're having as a team. But I really do believe that a lot of it does lie on Pete Carroll. The horrible drafting, that's on a combination of John Schneider and Pete Carroll, because they both, I believe, come in collaboration. But Pete Carroll has so much power over this team. I believe he probably makes the vast majority of the final decisions when it comes to drafting. When it comes to how horrible our scheme has been and how it's just not changing, I believe that's completely on Pete Carroll. Maybe Ken Norton has been calling bad schemes. Maybe Pete Carroll's trying to tell him to change and he doesn't want to. But to be completely honest, the biggest thing that really kind of proves that it's on Pete Carroll to me is Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron, when he was on the Rams, we saw he was running dynamic plays, a lot of tight end usage, a lot of underneath routes, and a lot of slants over the middle. We saw a lot of that, some really good running as well. But he comes under Pete Carroll and he is just looking like an absolute bum. He calls stupid plays. He doesn't use the tight ends the ways that he was doing in LA. He doesn't use slants at all. I don't think we've ran slants with DK Metcalf at all over the past few weeks, and it worked so well last year. I remember many plays where he would get a slant over the middle, get one block, and boom, he's getting at least 20 yards. Maybe he's getting a touchdown because that boy can run over basically anybody in the secondary. But we just don't run a dynamic offense, and I believe that's on Pete Carroll because, as I mentioned, Shane Waldron on the Rams ran very dynamic play calling. Maybe that was Sean McVay taking over there. Maybe that's not on Shane Waldron, but I believe Pete Carroll, he is just trying to surround himself with yes men, and if they aren't yes men, like maybe Shane Waldron wanted to do his own thing, he's going to get them as far to his side as he possibly can. You know, we've seen some different things done by Shane Waldron, but when it comes down to it, I believe Shane Waldron is being completely limited by Pete Carroll. It seems like he just can't run the plays that he wants to run, because what he was doing with the Rams, I could only imagine what that could do with how great our wide receivers are, how great our tight ends are, and how great Russell Wilson is. But we just don't see anything dynamic like that happening. Ken Norton, my God, I've talked enough about this defense and Ken Norton and Pete Carroll and all that, but I do think the problems with the Seattle Seahawks come down when it comes to the overarching issue. I believe it's on Pete Carroll and his just a complete lack of change. And I think firing Pete Carroll will be the first step needed to be taken to make change. And if the Seattle Seahawks don't make the playoffs, which is looking like it's definitely going to happen, I believe that could be the catalyst for change. You know, where we see maybe the owner finally grows a pair of nuts and balls and he's like, hey, Pete Carroll, I know you literally run this entire team and not me, but we're going to fire you here because, hey, you've had success in the past. That was kind of on the backs of the Legion of Boom, but we'll give you some credit. You got us a Super Bowl, but, you know, you really haven't changed anything in the last 4 years, and it's not looking good. Now that you don't have the Legion of Boom, now that Russell Wilson isn't playing at an MVP level, this team just is falling apart, and it seems like you're not really doing anything. So I believe if we got rid of Pete Carroll and got someone, you know, I don't really know the candidates for a head coaching job next year. Who knows who's going to be fired? Who knows who's going to be out of a contract next year? I have no idea who could possibly replace Pete Carroll, but just getting out that old hag, and it's really unfortunate that, you know, Pete Carroll has to be the guy that we fall back on, but 1 million times out of 1 million times, I would get rid of Pete Carroll before I got rid of Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson has just become absolutely trash overnight. I believe he's trying to say that he doesn't have an issue with his finger. He's trying to play with too much pride. I think Russell Wilson, especially now that the season is basically over, should really reconsider if his finger is at full health, reconsider if he really wants to go out there and try and be the hero, even though the season is basically unredeemable, and focus on his long-term health, especially with an issue to his middle finger of his throwing hand, which is probably the most important thing when you're throwing the ball as a quarterback. Maybe he should look at possibly taking the rest of the season off, or at least a few more weeks to really just let that thing heal. I don't know. But to kind of conclude the video, the overall idea is that the Seattle Seahawks season is over. And I believe it's a good thing because Pete Carroll can probably now go. The Seattle Seahawks have a reason to make changes and big changes. And I believe if Pete Carroll goes and he gets fired, then big changes could possibly happen. Russell Wilson could also possibly take some time off and he could get, completely healthy, because obviously there's something still wrong with his finger. Maybe we can focus on the future. DK Metcalf, he's going to need a deal soon. We don't want to make him too unhappy. Quandre Diggs is playing very well. I think he should get some money. Dwayne Brown is playing like absolute boo-boo butt cheeks. I don't think he should get a contract extension or anything like that, but we'll see what happens with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm not really going to keep up much faith for the rest of the season, because we're not going to do anything. Maybe we'll win a couple games, but I'm going to expect to lose every single game. And if we win, who knows? We'll see. Maybe it'll just be a little, little smile. But congratulations to the Jets on an absolutely fantastic trade. Getting rid of Jamal Adams, got a pretty good pick this year. I'm not going to lie. Good for the Jets. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are on all this. Should the Seattle Seahawks fire Pete Carroll, and why is the answer yes? And, even though this is kind of at the end of the video, the reason why I don't really consider the Seattle Seahawks trading Russell Wilson, one, what are we going to get? Draft picks? We're not good at drafting. And two, Russell Wilson has a no-trade clause, so trading him is going to be unbelievably difficult. We're not going to be able to trade him to some trash team and get good picks. He's going to want to go to a team that can win. So I don't really consider the prospect of the Seahawks trading Russell Wilson. But like I said, let me know down below in the comments what you thought about all this. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a great day.